I mean, originally when washing machines were invented, I assumed there was some sort of luxury, not everyone could afford them.
Well, as the strangest transition we've ever done, we're going to go from washing children's clothes into the standardisation of police uniforms.
I wonder how much it costs to wash those gloves. So this is from Captain Cook's time. It was a collection of cloth that he collected from the different civilizations that he went to go and explore and see.
Hello and welcome back to Watch the Story. Today we'll be talking about things textiles, uniforms and other forms of clothing, which surprisingly includes washing and a metal helmet. So to start with, let's find out if everyone's been researching. Anna?
So I've been researching about the Lily Laundry photographs, and also we found some Chesterley Street Union clothing coupons.
So I was looking into the fire at Lily Laundry and then about the clothing factory in West Auckland.
I know.
I found, I've done also a bit about Lily Laundry in the West Auckland factory, but I've also found a book from one of Captain Cook's voyages where he collects different samples of cloth, and I honestly just thought that was the coolest thing ever. So yeah, I've done a bit of research into that.
I've been doing about police and army uniforms, primarily police uniforms, and the pseudo-standardisation that kind of occurred in the 1930s and 40s. So what was this you found about the West Auckland factory thing?
So I found out a bit about its establishment at the time. So the article I found was from a newspaper from 1939. The West Auckland Clothing Company was established by the Lewin family, who were a Jewish family that came over from Germany. They were facing troubles in Germany due to the Nazis and things that were arising in Germany that weren't making it difficult for them to continue with their business, which was a clothing company. So they came over to England and they started their clothing company up here in the northeast. And they began with making trousers, and they employed lots of girls, I think around 120, and they had £5,000 worth of machinery and the people working here were becoming like experts at using this machinery, and were able to make over time be able to make lots of different kinds of clothes. So the photographs that we have of the West Auckland Clothing Company were actually a recent acquisition from the story, and we were able to look at them during our research and have a look dig through the photos and see what we could find. And there was some really high quality photos showing what life was like working in these in the factory that we found really quite interesting. Did you have?
Yeah. One of the photos that really stuck out to me was a photo of the coats that they made in a little clothing department store. It had the family name on them so that you knew that they were theirs. But it's just so interesting to see them all lined up in the non-working setting, and see them ready for sale. Another one which is quite, I think, contrasting to that one was a photo of the entire factory, in which you can just see rows upon rows of machines and women and men as well working to make these clothes. And sometimes you could, in a couple of them, you could see the big sheets that they dealt with of cloth and where it was stored. It was really interesting.
Yeah, some of those photos just showed you how vast the space was. There was like a lot of space that they were using for people to use this machinery to make all those clothes.
And we also have some photos from Lily's Laundry, don't we?
So before we get into those, I feel I should give a bit of a backstory on what Lily's Laundry is. It was a laundry company set up in Darlington, just off Russell Street, just off Russell Street, by a man called Ronald Hodgkin. His family were committed Quakers, a lot like the Quakers I talked about last episode, who grew the daffodils. And that was kind of reflected in the values of the workplace. The ladies who worked there weren't allowed to wear makeup, and they couldn't go out to the cinema, and they couldn't go out dancing. And if they were married before the age of 23, the company wouldn't give them a gift because they frowned upon getting married too young. I think it was one of the largest employers in the Northeast and the largest employer of women in the northeast, and it went on from 1912 to 1982, which is quite a long life for a business, I think you'll agree.
So I know you also had some information on Lily's Laundry.
Yeah, so some of the photographs, they like manually coloured in the collars. So there were like different coloured collars, and they corresponded with what jobs they did, although we couldn't actually find like what colour corresponded to which job. But yeah, I thought that was something interesting.
Lily's Laundry also had quite like extensive, I say extensive records. There were names on the bottom of the photos, wasn't there? Has anyone got anything on that?
Yeah, we cross-referenced it in the 1920 census, and we found a girl called Molly Fox and her sisters Jenny and Louisa, who were 18, 16 and 12, and they all worked there. They lived like a 40-minute walk away from the laundry. And it also shows how if, like, the laundry, they employed young girls, if one of them was 12. Yeah, so it was quite interesting to, like, find different people. I mean, we did see other examples, but...
That's quite interesting that you can find lots about local history just from the photos, because someone actually took the time to write the names down.
Yeah.
More depressing topic. You mentioned there was a fire.
Yes, a little bit sad. It did destroy a lot of kind of different parts of the laundry. So in 1937, there was a fire in the Lily Laundry, and it destroyed quite a lot of what they had there, and it was quite sad for all the people who had worked there. It was believed to have begun because of electrical equipment that had been down in the basement, and this had made it kind of obscured the fire, meaning that they hadn't discovered it for quite a while. So the fire had got a good hold on before the fire brigade was able to come. So the fire was eventually spotted, and a woman kind of notified her husband, saying, "Oh, I think like there was she could see smoke coming from the building," and the police were then notified, and they freed a couple of horses that had been there that were kind of getting a bit anxious about the smoke rising, and then the fire brigade arrived. It took about 45 minutes for them to get hold of the fire and to kind of calm it down a little bit, but eventually they were able to kind of subdue it and kind of make it kind of get a control of it. But while the fire brigade was sorting that out, the hose that they'd been using, it kind of burst a little bit, and there was some people watching, and they all got sprayed with water. So unlucky them, got a little bit wet. So there was quite a lot of losses in the fire. They lost army clothes, two garages, 2 delivery vans, and a 1-horse-drawn cart, and a considerable amount of troops' clothing were also destroyed. It was quite damaging. Luckily, the fire brigade was able to save the offices and some of the valuable machinery, but it did cause a lot of damage to the laundry.
I've got a little excerpt from a celebration book about Lily's Laundry for, I think, an anniversary, maybe straight after the fire, about the fire and what happened. It reads, "We shall not easily forget our feelings on the January 30th, 1937, when we arrived at work and found that a fire had occurred during the night. Our first feelings were of dismay, but we soon began to realise the merciful deliverance of what could so easily have been a great outward disaster." You can really see the Quaker motto coming through here, maybe a little bit, because after a fire, I imagine some people would be quite shocked, a little bit rattled, quite scared. But here it reports that they were happy that the fire damaged what it did and not people. Yeah. And I mean, I suppose that could be true, but I don't think I would call it a merciful deliverance.
Yeah, on the newspaper article, there was a photograph of like the cart that they had, and it was completely burnt out, and it just looked kind of just really sad, really.
Yeah, definitely not a merciful deliverance. They lost quite a lot of equipment. Yeah.
So did the fire end the business, or did they still trade?
They still traded. They were still trading well into the 80s. Well, as far into the 80s as 1982 is. But, they were still going. And in fact, this little book that I found was made, I think, a couple of months after the fire. So they were clearly still in business for that. Yeah. They still were washing people's clothes.
So, do you have any idea as to why it might have closed down in the 1980s?
I imagine the invention of better, newer washing machines probably helped that. I mean, originally when washing machines were invented, I assumed they were some sort of luxury. Not everyone could afford them. But with the modernisation of better technology, more affordable technology, more and more people started to have washing machines. So I imagine that's probably why they went out of business.
Okay, so how much would it have costed to have your laundry done then?
Well, I've got a couple of bits and pieces about that too. One of the things I was given along with the celebration booklet was a little pamphlet with prices in for various different pieces of clothing. So I thought we could play a little game. I thought we could guess how much it costs to get a piece of clothing done. But of course, it's not fair if I don't give you any information. So I'll give you the price for some pyjama suits. So gentlemen's pyjama suits cost 9 pennies. Do you think a woman's fancy muslin plain apron cost more or less?
I think less.
You're correct. It cost 4 pennies. Jack, do you think a man's dressing gown cost higher or lower than a woman's fancy muslin apron?
I mean, dressing gown is probably more fluffy, you'd probably have to put more effort into it, feel. So I'm going to say higher.
Lower, actually. 2 pennies.
I feel like I'm never any good at these games.
Hannah, do you think that a man's waistcoat cost higher or lower than his, what was the last one?
Dressing gown?
His dressing gown.
I'd say higher because it's something you like wear out.
It's actually lower. They only cost 1 penny.
These
Yeah.
prices are crazy.
I know. Do you think that a man's waistcoat, which we know, cost more or less?
Than a man's waistcoat.
Yeah. Do you think that a child's cuffs cost more or less than a man's waistcoat?
I
Just
feel
to-
like a
I
child's
think-
clothes
yeah.
should cost less, right? Because they'll be smaller.
I'll have a look. It's very small. They cost more, actually, 2 pennies.
Oh, okay. I guess it can't be.
Yeah, I'm just dodging. Do you think that a child's cuffs cost more or less than their gloves?
Like the cuffs?
The cuffs on this compared to gloves, little white gloves.
Well, it would be less then because cuffs are bigger.
They're actually the same price.
Oh my god,
That
I
was
give
a
up.
trick question. I'll throw you off a curveball. Do you think some bed hangings? Sorry, that's not fair. That says according to work. Sorry. Do you think that some blankets cost more or less than a child's pair of gloves?
I'd say more because they're like a larger surface area.
They're kind of the same. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, last one. Do you think a roller, whatever that is, costs more or less to wash than some blankets?
I'll say less because I feel like the blankets should be.
It's more, actually. The roller costs 3 pence.
Feels like they just gave random
I
prices.
know, it does. I don't know. I suppose maybe because the cuffs are so intricate, maybe. Because, if you look on my cuffs and probably your cuffs, they're all ruffled. Depends on the design. But I imagine to smooth something out so small would be really difficult.
Okay, yeah.
So would the cuffs be like separate? I can't say I'm too knowledgeable on.
I think so. Because on here there's also collars as well.
Right.
So you know how you can sometimes steam your collar, get it flat.
Mm-hmm.
I think they just did them as 2 separate services to the rest of the.
So if you had a full suit, you'd have to pay for the cuffs, the
Yeah.
collar, the actual shirt
I
itself,
imagine.
the waistcoat, any
Yeah.
form of gloves.
The
right?
waistcoat, the dinner jacket. Fairly certain there was a price for a dinner jacket on here, or tennis jacket, which was 2.
Very quickly adds up then.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's how they made their money. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in business for so long, would they? Yeah.
Well, as the strangest transition we've ever done, we're going to go from washing children's clothes into the standardisation of police uniforms. I'm very good at these transitions, I know. So, pretty much, police uniforms for all the time were kind of different depending on the areas you were. Even inside County Durham for a while, they were different depending on the boroughs they were in, before they were eventually pseudo-standardised into something more which you would kind of imagine the early 1930s to look like. However, at one point, which I actually found down in the archives, well, I say I found, I was given it, so I'm not going to give myself too much credit there. It was a letter, to kind of chief constables and stuff in the area, and it was detailing what materials things were allowed to be made out of. Had all these photos in about how it was meant to look. So instead of each area having its own kind of I don't know what I'm saying there. Instead of it all looking very different across the board, they wanted it to look more kind of similar not to where you were, because one of the main concerns with people coming from different areas, you'd be able to tell that they weren't local to the area, like this policeman was new here because of what they were wearing, and as such it's probably much more easy to be able to get away because they wouldn't know exactly what they were. One of the better things I actually found, it was called a reefer uniform, which I quite enjoyed. Basically, it's because you've got this introduction of more motorised ways of policing. The reefer uniform was designed for motorbikes, so it had very early giant gloves, which would go down to about near your elbows. And it was really fancy looking. They were very much so on fashion then. It was kind of moving towards more practicality than looking good or cost. Although cost was actually a massive part of it, because it was more so they want it to be as good as it can for as cheap as it can. And so it had very, very detailed materials like T52 or something. I could never tell you what any of it meant.
I wonder how much it costs to wash those gloves.
I would guess a lot. It's quite. They had overcoats, and there was stuff for all the different sides. I think there was stuff on there for inspectors, stuff on there for, I think it said sergeant. I might be completely wrong. I feel like that's not police. But yeah, so it's kind of the beginning of more standardising across the country, which would eventually in the 20th century start to look more and more like what we know today. Mm-hmm. I just kind of thought that was interesting.
I think there are police sergeants not here but in other places.
It was kind of trying to style it more so off what the Metropolitan Police looked like, which was kind of the main point of it all. I've also got a bunch of stuff here about army uniform as well. Well, I say a bunch of stuff. I've got a list, because the DLI collection, it's got a bunch of replicas in, as you can see here. I feel like I'll put it on. Yeah. Ta-da. It's got a bunch of replica collections, because we can't handle most of the actual stuff that's down there. It's all authentic military uniform. So we've got lots of kind of original uniforms. And so all the replicas is so people can handle them, like I've said, the hats. And I've actually got a list here of everything we've currently got with us that we could actually try on. I have an army peak cap, an area precaution warden helmet, which I think's that one there actually. Mm-hmm. Just a regular kind of Brody helmet, child's military jacket, an adult's military jacket. Child's military jacket's interesting actually, because it kind of ties into the clothing thing of mothers might go to shops and have military jackets uniformed for the children, so because they might have parents in the army. The Women's Royal Army Corps, which we have a thing for, a warden's jacket, which goes to that, and we also have a much more. When I say red coat, I don't mean 1800s fighting Americans or French
early
people.
1900s maybe.
Yeah, I would say at this point it's probably more ceremonial.
I don't think they changed the coat until just before World War One.
It was in Boer War, I think.
Yeah,
they decided to
because they kept getting seen. They were like, kind of need to change this. Yeah.
Bright red kind of
out.
stands out. Big difference from the early 1800s, where it was all about trying to stand out. So you can see where everyone is through all the smoke.
Yeah.
So before we go try some of those on in a minute, I believe you have something. I say entirely different. Mine's quite different from everything, but yours is much further back than everyone else's.
Yeah. So this is from Captain Cook's time. It was a collection of cloth that he collected from the different civilizations that he went to go and explore and see. So these are mostly from what people wore. Sometimes they were just random pieces from different places. The actual book itself is made out of tarpa bark cloth, which is paper-like fabric produced from the inner bark of a paper mulberry tree. It's sort of been squished down into that, So it's not actually paper. It's, well, I mean, it's from the paper mulberry tree, but it's not the paper that we would think of today. And I actually got to handle it, which was amazing. I got to see all the little different pieces of cloths, feel the pages, look at the little tassels on the back. It was really interesting to see all the different types of cloth and how they've held up and survived over the years. There were lots of different interesting patterns. Yeah, really cool.
So do you know, like, what, if I was put into a more modern context, what kind of, like, places would it been?
He would have been, so Tonga, I believe the book title describes it as the Southern Hemisphere, so down from the equator. Hot countries maybe, sort of previously unexplored areas in the hotter Southern Hemisphere.
So what year is this actually from? And slightly better question, why do we have a book from these voyages?
So the year it's from 1787. So by far one of the oldest things that I've probably seen in this collection. We have it because it's on loan from us from the Strathmore archives, which was a family related to, well, it was the Bose family, and they liked collecting things. So they have it on loan to us. And yeah, it's a really fascinating way of archiving history. Just keep it in your family home.
So thank you everyone for your research here. And this will actually be the last episode of this mini-series, I'll say, of this series. And we will be back. Thanks for watching and see you soon.